welcome to New Mountain. Welcome to the Be the Change gathering here. Very excited to see this early arrival and everybody coming in. Really like to thank everybody who helped set this up, especially our food. We had Katua Market donated chips. We had Reed's Hummus donate a lot of hummus over there. And Taste and Seafood Truck has a chicken and veggie gyros over there. So we're going to mingle for 30, 45 minutes. I'll get to know each other, hang out, get nourished. And we got drinks over there. We got Bucci in the house. And we're going to do this thing gradually. And in about 30 minutes, we'll start engaging as the event starts to really, push it up. So thank you all so much. Yeah, Taste and See has veggie gyros and chips over there for $5. There's free hummus and there's free chips and hummus. Yeah, and then the Juice Pure and Simple over here. My bad. Yeah, Juice Pure and Simple's over here. They're a new Asheville cold pressed juice company. And we're gonna, like I said, mingle, gather, and then we'll start the official gathering in about 30 minutes. Thank y'all.
doing business and doing a force for good? How about a round of applause if you're a business or looking to be a business and doing force for good? How about a round of applause for that? Thank you. Thank you for coming out. I can't see all of your beautiful faces, but I know that you're out there. Welcome to New Mountain, Asheville, and we are in the theater. You'll notice all the beautiful renovations going on around you. I'll be introducing leadership in this effort and many other efforts here locally in just a moment. But I just wanted to introduce myself to you all. I'll be your MC for this evening and also helping to ground the conversation that we're having around using business as a force for good. And we're really excited that the B Corp movement is growing here in Asheville, but even more excited to connect with people both in this room and out in the community that are really serious and really action-oriented around being values-oriented and positively impacting people on the planet, because it's really our right and responsibility to leave the world a little bit better than we found it, right? So that's what we're here for, yeah? My name is Cortina. I don't think I said that before. And beside me, I have none other than Mr. Adrian Zelski. And so without further ado, if you'll welcome him with a round of applause.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming here tonight. I cannot tell you how much this warms my heart, and you know, B Corporation is, like I say to everybody, it's more of a philosophy than anything to me. It's a certification, it's a corporate status, it is, what's the word? It is a legal, you know, documented thing that you have to go through a process, but it's also about just thinking about things in a different way. I think it's about looking at the world as our responsibility rather than our resource. If we look at things as business, as a holistic process, what B Corp kind of says is that it should be better for the planet, it should be better for your stakeholders, it should be better for your employees, it should be better for your customers, and in the end, it should be better for, you know, your profits. Everything about it should increase, you know, based on the idea that you're actually thinking it through, you're looking at future generations, and you're also looking at the way to really engage your community while you do this. It's the opposite of you know, of corporate, you know, corporate unaccountability. It's accountability, purpose, transparency. So B Corp is a philosophy. So if everybody knows that going into this tonight, it's not about you have to certify as a B Corp to be a part of this. This is about understanding what B Corporation is, how it came about, how we're growing, how it's becoming part of a movement towards conscious and socially responsible business. It's not about looking at things as you're either this or you're not. If you even think about B Corp, you're doing good for the world. So thank you all so much for being here first and foremost, for real. It's a powerful thing for people to come together, you know, to think it through. So, and I'm gonna give a quick speech tonight. It's gonna be totally run by this wonderful person, Cortina. She's an Asheville native, and Cortina embodies so much of what is necessary, which is alternative thinking, feminine leadership, minority leadership, stepping into business where we're looking at is not just a typical, you know, from bank to, you know, privileged person to company. It's about from the grassroots up. So Cortina is I mean, really, this is an amazing person, and we're gonna have her, you know, really run and hold this space for us here. And as New Earth Music is my parent company that is a California benefit corporation. When I moved here, that was the goal, was to really find the people in Asheville that could connect the B Corp movement to what is already present here, which is so many good people, so many good local businesses, food, beer, wine, crafts, innovation, all of it. You know, this is a seed that the B Corporation movement is watching very closely. So give yourselves a round of applause and give it up to Cortina.
Well, if I didn't already have on blush, I would be red. But I just, again, want to thank everybody for coming out. I think for the people that know me in the room, you know that one of my most core and heartfelt missions is to really help people to reach their highest potential. And whether that's an entrepreneur or an artist or an organization, to really tell that authentic story and to really create an authentic brand personally and professionally is I think, the most important thing that we can do. And that's why when I heard about what was coming forth to Asheville with Be Core and Be Local, it makes so much sense. And I'm so glad that each of you are now becoming an extension of what we have been working on in the background for the past few months, and that you'll continue to tell this story by telling your story, and that you'll continue to do the work, whether it's being a B Corp or just being more conscious of how you're doing business. And if you have a business, paying your employees a living wage, whether you have employees that are taking public transportation, making sure they have ways to get to and from work. Like, these are things that we have to consciously think about as a community, because we're so interconnected that if there's one incongruency or one imbalance in the system, that it affects everybody. And so what we're really here about tonight is to recognize that we are a network of people that can really make positive change. Asheville has been a leader in so many ways already for making change in the world, and this is going to be the way that we're remembered. So let's make history, and hopefully you'll continue to make the connections that we need to move this forward. So tonight we have a few things lined up for you, and I want to just start by giving you kind of a rundown. If you're like me, I can be kind of type A with events, and I like to know what's coming up. So I'll share that with you, and we'll just navigate through the night together. Does that sound okay? Yep. All right. So next up, we're going to be hearing from a couple of folks that are connected to the B Corp process. We have a panel lined up for you with Bucci Kombucha and Kroll and Company, and we'll hear from both of those in just a minute. After the panel, we'll have a documentary that actually was produced by some of the original founders of B Labs, which is a certifying organization behind B Corp. And the documentary is called Not Business as Usual. And what it really highlights is the fact that we are in the middle of a paradigm shift in our community, in our globe, in the planet, honestly. And really that shift is about changing the way that we're thinking about doing business, and not being profit-minded, but being people-minded. And so the documentary really highlights how we find relevance and how we connect in the middle of this shift. After the documentary, we'll save some time to do a community discussion, and we'll take questions. It could be specific to B Corp, it could be specific to how do I find my place in the midst of what's happening, or it could just be an announcement, and that's okay too. And then after the discussion, we'll have entertainment from the Mike Rhodes Fellowship, which is a local band, and they're a jazz fusion, so you're definitely in for a treat. And they're really excited to be a part of this movement and this event tonight as well. So a couple other things to mention before we get started with the panel. Can I kind of see a show of hands? How many people have heard of B Corp before, or B Lab? So some, okay. About half the room, that's good. So we have some opportunity to educate a little bit, and so in that community discussion, and as we're going through the panel, I would invite the people that have heard about B Corp before to maybe speak up, and if there's any information that you found to be different than what we've shared, in the sense that maybe there's something new that we're sharing that you didn't know, definitely speak that to the room so that we make sure we get any lingering questions answered. And we can all help educate each other. Off to our, I guess, stage left back here, I want to give it up for Roots Hummus and Taste and See. Can we give them a round of applause? Oh, and also Katua Market representing as well. We have the $5 heroes from Taste and See, Katua. Oh, and Pure and Simple's over here. I didn't see you over there. Thank you so much for being here. So we have some amazing juice gurus who, if you haven't visited them already, please ask them about what they're up to and what they're doing. They're representing for us here tonight as well. So lots of things to choose from. If you need refreshments, please feel free to help yourself to that throughout the evening. I also wanted to mention, in addition to the intention that we're setting, we have one overarching goal for what we're doing locally in Asheville. And our goal is to have 30 B Corp certified businesses within a 24-month period. And so that could be, I mean, if there's just 10, maybe 10% of the people, or 15 or 30% of the people in this room that go through that process within, that 24-month period, we've done our part. But even more importantly than that, if all of us leave a little more educated and aware of what this actually means, then that's like the bigger vision. So we are putting some numbers behind it so that we can measure our progress and continue to update the folks out in California on how we're doing. And again, just continuing to connect ourselves to the larger global network. Right now, we have about 4 to 5 currently certified B Corp organizations. And those include Big Path Capital, Michael Welchel, I think he's in the room, crowd out there somewhere. Cruel and Company, who we mentioned. Bark House, and New Belgium Brewing Company is also certified B Corp. So definitely feel free to tap in with those people and either tonight or after tonight's event, just ask them how that process has gone for them, and they can help educate you a little bit as well. All right, so without further ado, I am going to invite our lovely panelists up at this time. So if Peter Cruel with Cruel and Company and Mike with Bucci Kombucha would join me on stage, and if you'll give them a round of applause for representing and showing up. Okay, so we're going to just start by doing a quick check-in, just maybe tell people your name and what you do, and then we'll go right into questions.
My name is Pete Kroll. I'm president and founder of Kroll & Company, and we are Asheville's socially and environmentally responsible investment management firm. We are B Corporation certified. I think that's all we need to start out with for now.
Hey guys, my name is Mike Numanis, and I work with Bucci Kombucha as the vision caster and kombucha ambassador. We get to make up our own titles, so I have a little fun with that. So I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of my tribe at Bucci. We are not yet a certified B Corporation, but that's a process that we are just beginning now, so we can kind of speak from that stage as a company interested in becoming B Corp and in the middle of going through that process.
Great. So the first question, and I'll direct this first to you, Peter. How do you use business as a force for good?
I think business as a force for good is probably one of the quickest ways that we can push for change, because business has the ability to scale, and through scale we can be a much bigger influence. So for example, in the work that we do a lot of shareholder advocacy. And shareholder advocacy is pushing companies to be better citizens, pushing companies to be more transparent in the way they do business, pushing companies to basically be transparent in terms of things like political contributions, what their CO2 emissions are. And so by working with other businesses that are similar to mine, we're able to make a change on a very big scale. We use mutual fund companies that especially do responsible investing. And before I go farther, I'm going to apologize. I'm sick, so my voice is probably a little scratchy here. I apologize for that. But using that scale, I think we can make a bigger change in the world.
Can you all hear me if I don't use the mic? No? Oh, man. That's too bad. I hate microphones. Okay, worth a try. So the question is how we view and use business as a force for good. And I'm going to kind of take it in a specific piece and then kind of a more zoom back and broad macrocosmic perspective. A few things that we do really specifically to try to use business as a force for good is recognize that when you have a product that goes on shelves in hundreds of locations and a billboard on that bottle and then text on that bottle and a website that you have a lot of people going to, what you have is a platform to put ideas out through. And so what we've tried to do is make our newest flavor series, it's called the Intentional Series, something that raises awareness for what we consider to be really important social causes. The three that we've picked are GMO seed protection and seed sovereignty, food sovereignty through the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, which is protecting small artisan producers and farmers from regulatory agencies and Monsanto, and then also reforming and rethinking the way that we educate our kids. And we have a few more intentions that are going to be launched this year. But each of those flavors tells the story and talks about why we think that's important in an effort to put that topic into public dialogue and consciousness, and then also raises money from every bottle or draft cup sold to donate to what we like to call social profit, but nonprofit organization that is working directly for that field. So that's like a really specific way. We also started a school in the community called the AVL Learning Community. Have any of you guys heard of it? Yeah? Oh, awesome, great. So the idea was Sarah and Janine, as a few of you know, met through their kids' homeschool co-op and started brewing kombucha together for the Asheville Farmers Market and Rosetta's Kitchen. So their plan was eventually to try to open a school, which they did. And it started with just their 3 kids put together, and then a few more kids from friends of ours in the community started coming, and then we had 6 kids, and 3 years later we have just over 20 students and 3 full-time teachers. And the school is really growing and taking off, and it kind of implements a lot of our ideas and ideals around Montessori-influenced education, outdoor integrated learning, teaching kids about wild medicinals, plant medicines, and having a really community-based school, which is what we see at least as one evolution of the homeschool co-op, which still brings together the larger resources of a community while maintaining some of those really sweet sovereignty pieces of educating kids outside of the programming of the public school system. So there's some specific examples. We also pride ourselves on being a community-centered organization, and that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but really it's about being a part of the community that you're in, and every community that you're in. And one example that I'll give that's a small example of what I think is a much bigger value set is sugar. We find and have found a really great source for non-GMO organic sugar that is pretty sustainable, that we're really happy with, and we order a lot of it for all the kombucha brewing, and so we make that sugar available to other local businesses at a reduced cost, like the Hop and Mac Daddy Lemonade, and so that's something that is what we'd like to have a lot more of as we grow, is the ability to start taking all these small businesses in the Asheville community and weaving them together so that they can actually have more resiliency and more buying power in every way that applies. I think broadly, and then I'll be quiet. We can move to the next question. Broadly, though, I think to us, business as a force to good comes down to how far you can tease apart what we think of and call capitalism from what we practice in commerce, because they're very different things. Whereas one has come to mean something that's extractive and divisive, the other is something that's extremely empowering and beautiful and builds community and allows people to express their values through what they produce in the world. And so we really try to keep the focus on how we can play into commerce and continue to grow our community, create profit, but do well at being good. Kind of a B Corp tagline. So I'll just stop there.
Great. So the next question to both of you would be to talk specifically about the why. What really attracted you to the B Corp certification process? And even before being attracted to the B Corp certification process, what was it for you that really compelled you to be more intentional about how you do business?
I can say that I started out with Merrill Lynch a long time ago and have had a reformation since then. And there were 2 people who really influenced my change from being a traditional investment advisor. And one of them is my lovely wife, who is in the crowd somewhere. I can't see her here, who is a scientist and who really sort of opened my eyes or took me back to a time when being in nature was really important to me. Second is a gentleman named Bill McDonough, he wrote the book Cradle to Cradle, and I'm sure a bunch of you know who he is, probably one of the world's foremost green architects. And I had a chance to spend an afternoon with Bill several years ago, and putting those 2 things together, it just made sense. It made sense to move beyond what we used to call Mother Merrill and do something that actually made impact. And so in June of 2004, I hung my shingle out and jumped. And I have never looked back. It's been one of the most amazing times to be in the socially and environmentally responsible investing industry, because we continue to see growth every single year. People are opening their eyes and they're seeing that it's not cool to own Halliburton. It's not cool to own Monsanto. And what can we do with our monies that not only can do well for us, how can we have competitive returns, but how can we do well for the world as well? So for me, switching, when we incorporated last year, there was really no doubt whether or not we were going to do the B Corporation certification. And we did it in just a few months. It was relatively easy, and we don't have a whole lot of moving parts. There's 3 employees, and we don't have the type of operation that these guys have where there's a lot of moving parts. But it still was very intensive and gratifying at the same time to really have somebody look behind the door and see what's really going on, what's your governance like, how do you interact with your community, how do you treat your workers, and of course, what is your environmental impact? So for us, again, there really was no question whether we were going to do it or not.
So why we're excited about the process. For us, I think the process, being a B Corp, is something that feels like a really integrated aspect of what we've been trying to create with this business from the beginning. And so we're excited to actually have an outside third-party entity that can hold us accountable and push us. I think of it kind of like, do any of you guys, this is a silly question, who in here does yoga? A lot of people doing yoga, a lot of stretching.
This is Asheville.
Yeah, no, that's why I had to modify. Okay, so what's the difference between when you do yoga at home and then when you actually go to like Asheville Yoga Center, Asheville Community Yoga? How much of a better practice you get when someone else is kind of like setting the standard and holding you accountable and you're trying to keep up with everyone else in the class? That's kind of why we're excited about B Corp, because we have all these ideals, we have all these visions, and we have ways that we've kind of like intuitively put it together with Scotch tape sitting around a kitchen table. But actually having something that's scalable and sustainable requires more thinking than that. And it requires more than just high-minded ideals and excited conversations. It requires really digging in deep to every element of your process and thinking about what you're doing. And it's been something that's been a natural evolution for us. As we've grown, we've gotten better and better at doing this, but we're still learning like how we communicate and how we put out there. And I think recently we've gotten a little bit overexcited about some of the visions and have forgot to communicate really authentically from where we actually are right now. We've gotten a little bit like looking at what we see Bucci turning into, which is really exciting, but really like putting, Henry David Thoreau has this great quote, like, don't worry if you've built castles in the sky, now just go and put the foundations under them. So for us, B Corp is kind of that foundation.
That was really well stated. And I also wanted just to reflect back on what both of you had mentioned, because that's a question that's come up in a lot of the local press that's been following kind of the growth of this movement locally is why now, and why is this conversation around B Corp relevant? And for us, especially the people that work to put this event together and are kind of behind holding space for the movement, we recognize that being intentional isn't a new conversation in Asheville, but having the structure that B Corp provides is new, and it creates possibility. And so definitely keep that in mind as a seed as you're thinking and trying to put action behind what it is that you all are doing, is that we recognize and honor the fact that this isn't a new conversation about being values oriented, but that this is a great framework that can really help to create some strategies to make things more sustainable. So we just wanted to share that. So next question to you guys would be, what did you learn by using the B Impact Assessment? And so maybe talk to folks a little bit about what that is and how did that help you kind of refine your business model?
And again, like I said, for the last question, we're not a huge company, so for us it was much easier to look at our processes. Everything from governance, which is looking at how transparent we are, how do we show how we do business to our stakeholders, which are our clients and our employees, and that is a matter of reporting, and we report on a regular basis, and looking into how we treat our employees. So we're also fair wage certified through Just Economics. Again, when we brought people on, it was a no-brainer. You do the right thing, and I think that's something that runs through everybody who are entrepreneurs within this group is that you want to do the right thing, and the question is it profitable? Can we do it? Can we maintain the level we're at? Do we need to make less money? And the reality is you don't, because doing the right thing is profitable if you when you really take a look at it. The other things they look at are environmental impact. We're in a paper-intensive industry. People have to sign all kinds of documents for us. We do everything we can to minimize it. Everything from trying to do as much online signing as we can, but using 100% recycled paper when we need to, and then recycling it again beyond that once it's shredded. And community, involvement in community. For us, that's important. I'm chair of what used to be Western North Carolina Alliance, which is now Mountain True. Do we have any members out here? Please, somebody say yes. And so my time spent there is very important. My business partner Neil is on the board of Dogwood Alliance, and so being involved in our communities is very important. So that's something that we were scaled on. So in terms of what we learned from the assessment, we learned that we're doing the right damn thing, and we're continuing to do well with it. And we will be reevaluated in 2 years. It's a 2-year process, or not 2-year process, but a 2-year cycle. And our goal is to continue to improve every year.
So before I start answering that question, I got to give a plug to this company that I like, and this is such a great room to do it. There's a company that Woody Harrelson started called Step Forward Paper, and they use all post-industrial straw production products, so there's pretty much no trees used in the creation of paper, and it's the same price, and you can order it online through Staples, and Woody Harrelson is an awesome guy, so we should all go buy it. Anyway, so talking about the B Corp process and how we started going through the B impact assessment. Yeah, right term. So what we learned when we opened the B impact assessment is that we had a lot of work to do. It is thorough. It is really thorough, you guys. You're gonna have to dig in deep to your company. And it's like the organic certification on crack, really. It's like that plus a million other layers on top of that that factors in. The reason that it's good is because it is comprehensive, and it factors in how well you're paying your employees, where are you sourcing your ingredients from, what kind of distribution channels are you going through, and really, especially for a manufacturer, there are so many pieces from sourcing to final product that it is a really in-depth and thorough process. So the first thing that we realized is that we were going to have to budget a lot more time and energy for this than we thought we were at first. It is a big project. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, we'll get our B Corp certification this week, and then next week we'll do something else. You're going to have to put some focus and time into it.
So in other words, dig deep. Okay. All right, so we'll wrap this part of it up with one last question. And actually, we'll make it a 2-part question. How's that? And then we'll move into the documentary. So the first part of the question is, in this process, what's the biggest challenge that you faced, and what would be your advice to others?
I think the biggest challenge we faced was just simply gathering the documentation. There's a lot of documentation that goes into this. This is not, like you just said, this is not an easy certification. You have to document and back up everything that you tell these guys. Everything from who's printing your brochures to what you're paying your employees, type of hours they're working, type of benefits they're getting. And so just simply the time that it takes to put all of that together is probably the hardest part. And any advice I would give would be, if you're on the fence about it, just do the assessment. You don't have to pay anything until you get to the process of actually being certified. So, going through the assessment will tell you and set the bar for you. So, passing or being certified, your score has to be an 80 out of 200. And so taking some time to actually go through the process, answer the questions, try to gather everything up, and then see where you score, see where you end up. It'll give you a goal to shoot for. So again, we scored, I believe, 100 or somewhere close to 100 on our first round, and we were really excited about that. So just go for it and do it. And I do have to say something. We were in Telluride, I think 3-4 weeks ago, and we're walking in the grocery store, and what's on the shelves but kombucha. and we bought some and had a little bit of Asheville while we were in Colorado. So
appreciate that. For us, I'd say the biggest challenge has been the amount of time and therefore money it takes. We are a small team and we are stretched really thin. Right now, Bucci is in around 750 accounts in 18 states. And we are a small tribe and we're doing all of that out of Asheville. And we handle everything. I mean, all the manufacturing and all the moving pieces and the marketing and coordinating demos and developing new flavors and all the relationships and community partnerships. So as you guys can all relate to, if you're entrepreneurs, we're stretched pretty thin, and taking on another project, even if it's a small one, it's like, all right, who's gonna do this? And this is not a small project. So that's been the biggest challenge is, as a company that's already kind of energetically stretched thin, this is definitely a value set for us, but how much time do we give this? How do we afford to do this? Who on our team do we like really assign to making this a big part of their, a big part of their task list each week for the next couple months? And so that's been a huge challenge. And as for advice, I would say if you're starting up or just starting up, start now. Like build the framework into the DNA of your company as you figure out what that even means and what connection that's gonna entail. The sooner you get that structure and framework in place, your company can kind of grow around it. And that'll really help and make it easier later. Also, I was driving here with Bucci Mama Janine, and I asked if she had any advice to share, and she said something that I loved. She said, be careful who you take money from. Otherwise, you might end up finding yourself answering to them instead of to your values. And as we've grown, it's been really tempting. This is no longer a quote. As we've grown, it's been really tempting. We've had a couple offers for money, including from people who seemed like we weren't talking to the evil empire or anything. We were talking to private equity investors who, wore barefoot shoes and, ate vegetarian and were really cool. There's a lot of really cool people out there, but that doesn't mean that their values and their deep set intentions or ethos behind what they're doing are in alignment with yours. And so you need to be really careful and selective about who you give that kind of buy-in in your company to.
And I had one more quick piece of advice too, and it actually comes from probably one of the bigger and more well-known B corporations, Patagonia. If anybody has read the book, Let My People Go Surfing, if you haven't, read it, because Yvon Chouinard, who founded the company, really talks about the ethic, the values that they put together to create this company. And for a company that size to be a B corporation is pretty magnificent. And so if you want to learn more about it, if you want to learn more about it from his perspective, I would highly recommend that book as well.
Can we give another round of applause for our panelists for being so insightful?
Okay, so I'm really nervous to share this, but the pounding feeling in my heart is usually a sign that says go. So I just got an urge to share something with y'all that I think this is the perfect room who I wrote this message for. So this is a spoken word piece that I wrote about why it's important to be optimistic in business and in life. This is for you, B Corp community. It's optimism which optimizes our potential, and its effects are exponential. And so I've found that in the company I now keep, I see all of my intentions multiply like 10 factorial, because I live here in Asheville, in community, with a group of artists. And we all use lies to tell the truth. We spin them into wisdom allegorical so that here, as historical prejudices and perspectives repent, we don't have to tear down what's old to reinvent. We've realized we can simply circumvent and then pitch a tent on the sacred grounds of our ideals. The concepts that we in this room are rolling out right now spark just as much revolution as when humans invented the wheel. And each of us were like a spoke spun or a word heard. Like a probiotic culture, we fermented into curds. And now we're trying to shepherd the herd and help protect this delicate transformation. We tune our own connection with meditation and contemplation, but we're breaking out of a caste system and creating our own station. And if you dial in the knobs of your mental radio receiver and you pick up my transmission, I'll know you're already a believer, that the society has become infected and we exist at a fevered pitch. It's time to ditch this fear mentality And then it's just an eventuality. We'll all wake up, sweating, and realize that the whole time we were asleep, we were the ones aiding and abetting the cultural bloodletting. And now the time has come to change the setting and to evolve the plot, because the future, it's just whatever we see in it. It's like a Rorschach ink blot, just a pattern of our mind's creation. And now this stage is set for our manifestations.
Applause for our panelists, please. Give it up. Bucci Kombucha, Kroll and Company. So, realizing that we may not all be able to hang out the whole night because it is a school night, I want to go ahead and share with you the what's next, right? So, we've heard from some really great examples about how they've gone through this process. We've set the stage, we've set the intention. So what is it that we can really ground into to carry us through this movement, so to speak? If you haven't already, make sure to please sign up and put your email and name down on our e-news list. That's going to help us ground you into kind of this what's next and what's evolving. Right now, we have a meetup group online, which is Be the Change Asheville. So it's meetup.com/BeTheChangeAsheville. And that's where we post all of our events, whether it's the weekly lunches that we're currently hosting. The next one of the lunches will be on Friday, February the 20th at 12:30 at Green Stage, the Westgate location. And that's a space where you can come and kind of quick rapid fire, ground in, connect with people. And we also are adding a programmatic piece to that. So we'll either go through some of the questions in the B Corps handbook, or we'll just have an open floor discussion about what it means to be values-oriented, challenges that are coming up, and really support one another. And that's at the lunch. Also, as far as these community gatherings, our vision is for these to be quarterly. We'd love to see your beautiful faces every 3 months and invite a friend the next time we have one of these. In addition to the gatherings and the lunches, anything else that any of you have going on that you want to share with the group that's relevant, definitely use Meetup as that space to connect and to help us really grow this and to really have that fire that we've sparked in some ways spread. So know that that invitation is coming. So again, please sign up for the e-newsletter list if you haven't already. In addition to that, we also have some really key folks in the B Corps movement that have eyes on Asheville, and I'll look into Adrian so he can give me a nod. But we have recently become the #2 state in the nation for inquiries on B Corps certification process. So, and that's right. And that has a lot to do with the movement that's been going on here with us locally, that's been really led and searched for a lot by Adrian. He's really humble and he won't take credit, but it's taken a team of us to really pull things together and to have this conversation happening. So know that the support is there. The network, once again, is global. North Carolina, Asheville specifically, our hope is that we'll have a local B Corps office here, so we're gonna fight for that. And the lunches are also a great way to connect with people that are already certified or going through that process that can be a consultant. So you heard from Mike and Peter that the two challenges they had were time. And so there's gonna soon be an opportunity for you to share with folks in the room how you might need help, and that could be having somebody walk through that process with you or for you, possibly. But yeah, so just know that those resources are there, and we definitely have some really good things that are happening here locally, so be sure to tap into those. Without further ado, I think we're gonna go ahead and roll into the documentary. I'm going to ask a couple of the guys to help move the table from off stage, and then we'll get that playing. And then after the documentary, we're going to open it up for some Q&A and just some really brief discussion. And then once again, we'll have some sounds from Mike Rhodes Fellowship and open it back up for some mixing and mingling. So thanks, y'all.
17 and 18. 17 and 18.
We have, in the course of the changes in our society, been establishing greater and greater incentives on people to behave in ways that most of us regard as immoral.
You know, the traditional form of capitalism is put a product to market, put a service to market, and make money. The way I contemplate entrepreneurship is figure out how the world is better off because of your product and service and bring that into the marketplace.
Business is kind of a construct for people to get together to achieve some kind of result. And so why not take business as a tool to achieve a more progressive result? Instead of seeing capitalism as evil and destroying humanity and the planet, you can take capitalism and say, use it with a conscience to create a purposeful result, a just and equitable society.
Can't we agree that capitalism is an economic system, a system for the production and distribution of things we need and want?
Go back 70 years. Think about what made in Japan meant in the 1940s and 50s, post-World War II. You have capitalism as a key tool in building economies.
It's new, it's automatic, it dictates, records, seals, sterilizes, stamps, and delivers in one operation without human hand.
Made in China in the 70s, Taiwan, and made in Hong Kong in the 70s and 80s.
What am I bid? What am I offered? Sold. Who's next?
These are global economies that are major economies of the world. Or what is next?
Follow the crowd to the Empire City, the Wonder City, the Windy City, the Fashion City.
Is it made in Bangladesh?
Get the big money. You make a pile and raise a pile. That makes another pile.
We come full face into what happens when capitalism is left unfettered.
We've reached 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. Watch us grow.
20th century model of capitalism has one rule in its operating system, which is the purpose of the corporation is to maximize shareholder value exclusively, even if that means that there are significant, for the benefit of the doubt, unintended consequences.
It's amazing to me how consumers just have this unshakable trust in what they buy.
Destroy DDT. Used right, it is absolutely harmless to humans and animals.
And when drinking water comes out sparkling clear, an asbestos cement pipe may have helped guard it from reservoir to home.
It's laden with chemicals and it's from questionable factories. And I think some of these scares has done us a favor on some level in raising the dialogue.
New communications channels like social media primarily are driving transparency into companies. They can't get away with uncareful behavior anymore. They need to be very, very diligent about how they serve the communities that they work in. That's driving corporate social responsibility, it's driving better governance, and it's certainly driving sustainability. That's been a constant trend over the last 15 to 20 years.
When you consider the world the baby boomers grew up in, it was post-World War II. Their parents who lived through the war, they grew up in a world of scarcity. People who were successful had stuff. So the baby boomer generation grew up in a world where if I had stuff, I was successful. This shaped the minds of that generation. So by the time the baby boomers get in control of the economy in the 1980s, excess was everywhere. It became about stuff. And you had the big stories of the 80s, like the Tycos, the Enrons. Corporations became about adding book value for shareholders, not adding societal value for all stakeholders. In the last 50 years of business, companies are rewarded based on success of one metric, and that is profit. CEOs who are successful deliver profit to shareholders. Our entire stock exchange is founded upon that. So it's hard for us to criticize CEOs for forsaking other things like supplier relations or social impact or other causes.
As companies began to feel the pressure of global competition, the sole focus on making profit without regard for society seemed like a promising idea. Inspired in part by a 1970 New York Times article by Milton Friedman, the most respected and influential economist of the late 20th century.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Milton Friedman Choir.
Very simplistic view of the world where we would just define profit as dollars in minus dollars out equals profit. What we need to do now is sort of quantify all the soft costs.
It's very competitive in the international marketplace to find really low cost labor. When you manufacture something in another country and you import it, they put on a duty rate. Countries like Bangladesh, there is no duties. Because of that, you can save 18%. That's a huge amount of money. So what they do is they go to a lot of these countries that are exempt. My auditor of fabric mills told me that they had gone to Bangladesh. He said to me, do you know how many factories had a wastewater treatment plant? And I said, no, how many? 2 out of 300 that they visited. And there's, a lot more than 300 fabric mills in Bangladesh. Where's the chemicals and dye stuffs after dyeing it pink and blue? Where's that going? Straight into the river, straight into the creek. Are those creeks and rivers connected to oceans that we live beside? Yes, this is all connected. This is what people forget when they buy product that comes from a country that has no regulations, but they have to for the corporate culture. They have to make profit.
There has been another horrific incident at a garment factory in Bangladesh.
Came crashing down, trapping hundreds of people inside.
Officials discovered cracks in the building yesterday.
Producing clothes bound for some major American retailers.
This afternoon, a British retailer, Primark, announced it would compensate victims' families.
Loblaw is reacting. The company said late today that it will provide compensation to the families of those killed in Bangladesh.
There's something to be said if you're going to be in factories and pushing for low-cost labor. There's always a cost, and on some level, I think a lot of those brands are stepping up and paying a cost at the end of what they didn't pay at the beginning.
The core indicator of a country's health is the GDP. It's the total market value of goods and services produced in a single year. Social impact is not considered. The environment is not relevant. The health, happiness, and fulfillment of its citizens doesn't matter. Financial metrics are all that count.
We've got to a point now where quarterly returns are more important, it seems, in the news and more important to the way we cover businesses than the longer-term work that they do. So we're trapped in this short return cycle when most of these big problems and these big contributions to society actually take far longer cycles, right? They can be 3, 5, 7, 10 plus year cycles. If we're judging companies on quarterly cycles, we're never going to get the traction on these long-run goals. So there's something in the way we look at companies, there's something in the way we judge companies' performance that needs to change.
It's 1987.
Open this gate.
Reaganomics is in full swing. Simpsons debuts on television.
Cable channel. No.
And the Unabomber is on the loose.
Sir.
It's business as usual in America. Then it hits.
There's only one word to describe what's happening, and that is panic.
Black Monday, the worst day ever on Wall Street.
Market has fallen over 400 points.
508.32.
$500 billion in paper values have been lost.
When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us.
So there was a meeting in Gold Hill, Colorado of about 40 people, and it included that generation wave of entrepreneurs who made the clean, healthy ice cream, Body Shop, Patagonia, who went into business to try to make a difference and promoted themselves based on some of those values. And so that's 25, 26 years ago.
They came at the invitation of investor Joshua Mailman and Wayne Silby, founder of the Calvert Funds, to explore the idea of bringing social values into a more collective sphere. They didn't know at the time was that this would be the catalyst that would ignite the social impact movement.
When I got introduced to the SVN community, it was the first time I saw people with business skills who were using it for social purposes, social good. I had never heard of triple bottom line before. I mean, I'm now seen as this big global advocate for it. I heard about it for the first time at SVN.
This group started a movement. At that time, they were laughed at. They were ridiculed. You're a bunch of flakes. That was one thing that had to be countered. It's kind of not honorable to believe that capitalism was about anything other than how do I get more money. It's okay to give away money after you've made a lot of money, but business is a separate solitude from what matters in the world. But it gave me a support network that believed in the intersection of values and money. Out of it came businesses for social responsibility, net impact on business campuses, Investor Circle, which are people that look to do angel investing and early stage investing in companies like this. So there's now a growing ecosystem of different dimensions of aligning money with doing good.
In 2005, the co-founder of And One, a $250 million streetball company, attended his first SVN meeting. 2 years later, J. Cohen Gilbert would revolutionize what it meant to be a socially responsible company.
Because of the assumption that short-term shareholder value is all that matters to big investors, we now have a lot of states passing laws authorizing the creation of a different kind of corporation, a so-called B corporation.
Stands for the benefit that can be created for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. How do we tell the difference between a good company and just good marketing? Today, everybody claims to be green, responsible, and sustainable. And when everybody claims to be the same thing, those words mean less and less.
It was often, well, if I put all natural or if I put green in the title, then that makes me, sustainable, and I'm fulfilling part of the fad that is CSR in the world.
There's a couple of answers to who's doing this well. There are a few organizations that are putting metrics against this kind of performance, and the one that's top of mind for me is B Lab and the B Corp certification, where they've got a fairly rigorous assessment process.
And you're asked different questions, but they always talk about your company's employment practices, supplier practices, community engagement, and environmental practices.
The survey and the auditing process is actually quite difficult to get into B Corp.
And the company has to achieve a minimum score of 80 out of 200 on an independent rating system run by a nonprofit in order to be eligible to be certified as a B Corporation.
When we actually did the assessment for the first time, we didn't pass, and we exist for the main purpose. We realized how we really needed to step up our game in order to play with the people who are actually certified as B corporations.
But even if they scored 140, they're not eligible to be certified as a B Corp unless they make that legal change, so that positive impact is built to last.
It's not pretending to be good for the world. It is actually embedding in your articles of incorporation and your shareholders agreement the fact that this corporation will never forsake societal value to make money.
If you're familiar with a LEED certified building or a fair trade bag of coffee, that's what a certification is. Think about the same thing, but the aperture on your lens is wider. The aperture is looking at the whole business. Because it's nice that it's a fair trade cup of coffee, but if they're dumping effluents or treating their workers poorly, that doesn't really help anybody.
We need to redefine what corporations are, both from a legal perspective and just from a community perspective.
And so Benefit Corp legislation is a legislation to create a new corporate form, no different than a C Corp or an S Corp or an LLC, that is passed in Maryland and Vermont this year. It's been introduced in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Michigan in 2011, and there are another 8 states waiting in line to pass legislation to create a new corporate form to give entrepreneurs and investors another choice about the type of institution they want to create.
It's hard to keep up with the growth of B corporations. Now over 750 corporations in the world are B Corp certified, accounting for more than $6 billion in revenues. We've played our role. We've certified 3 businesses, as well as the first ever publicly traded B corporation in Canada.
I think it's the most exciting thing ever. And I think that a lot of the old structures are kind of breaking down right now, and that we're seeing, for example, charities being confronted with funding difficulties, and we're seeing businesses being questioned for lack of integrity and lack of values, and people, consumers losing faith in them. And so I feel like the conscious capitalism movement is kind of taking the best of both.
Host of the 2010 Olympic Winter Games and birthplace to companies like Hootsuite and Lululemon, Vancouver consistently ranks as one of the most livable cities in the world. But it's not all yoga pants and sushi. The notorious downtown east side has earned a sobering reputation as Canada's poorest postal code.
Pretty complex neighborhood, the downtown east side of Vancouver.
Which is a hugely marginalized area for people with drug addiction. One of the worst drug places in the world. Like, could be as simple as some guy walks in on his wife cheating on him, he gets on a train, next thing he's here for 20 years. And the stories down here are rife with that.
But somewhere between privilege and poverty, an interesting phenomenon has started to occur. Ordinary people are embracing a new way of being in business, with a commitment to social impact and a purpose beyond profit.
So Save On was a haven for me. So I would come and eat here for $3.95 and stuff myself and talk to Al Delorier, the former owner. And he was an incredible man. He ran this business from 1957 right up until 2009. His mandate in this area was food security. He didn't have the words for it, and of course now that's the coolest lingo in the world. So people would come in, they'd drop $1.50 on the counter and say, what can you do? And he'd get them some honey ham and a couple slices of bread, and off they would go. So that affected me heavily, that there was somewhere still in the city, because I didn't see that piece of the city at all. I didn't know that that existed until I walked in this building. I saw it as a fast-paced, high finance, what car do you drive, intimidating town. The idea was to continue to make it a community piece, a food security piece, a haven for people in this neighborhood during a time of gentrification. We run a barrier employment program out of here, and so we started working with people who had all the work ethic and just had barriers to any kind of employment based on addiction and severe mental disorder. And then we launched a charity based off of this business model last Saturday called the Better Life Foundation, which is entire mandate is to feed, train, and employ. We realized that the problems in this neighborhood are so big and they're so intense that I know what part I can do. And my portion is food and training and employment and dignity. So we created this token program, which is hugely controversial, nationally controversial. And you come in here, you go to the diner counter, the butcher counter, the sandwich window, and you buy these tokens. They're essentially the size of a toonie. They sit in your pocket. Somebody says, I'm hungry. You say, no problem. Take this and you can go get fed. So what people say is, I'm taking the decisions away from the poor. I'm using it for my own personal development. I'm using it for my own soapbox to go and do whatever else it may be and leverage it for business. I don't know that that's entirely untrue. I do have my own mandates and things that I want to do, and I do want to be loud and boisterous about it, and I do want to affect change, and I may not be going about it in the most Canadian and conservative of ways. I don't care at all. I initially thought we might redeem 5 to 8 of these things a day. Right now we're redeeming anywhere this week between 65 and 120 a day, every day. And now the VPD outreach, the Vancouver Police Department, their outreach department carries them every night. The coastal health nurses that help people who are very close to death or are overdosing, they carry them in their pocket. It's become a part of this neighborhood's fabric. Very unpopular decision, very unpopular press piece. I don't give a shit at all. I know what the end result is going to be in my mind, and I'm okay to take some losses with the wins. I think it's great to have this huge blowback into what I do, because then I get to see it from other people's eyes who've been down here working for 20, 30 years. So I come, flash in, kid with tattoos, slick back hair, I'm going to do all of this social change and good. I'd be pissed off with me too. The detractors also show me things about myself. They show me flaws in my business. It may be 250 words of vitriol, but 30 of those might be dead on. And they are most of the time like, oh, I didn't really think about that. So I'm reverse engineering a business. I'm allowing people to light me up and burn me in the press or on blogs or whatever that may be to get better at what we do. And I don't take any of it personally, because you can't.
You know, I was really looking for something that took business and really had a strong connection to community. So I stumbled across Potluck. All of a sudden I was in a place that was running a business. It was all about social mission. It was all about community impact. And I thought, this is the place that I belong. We're an organization that at the core of our existence, the reason we started, the core of our being, the fact that we are a charity that owns and operates a business, in our case, fundamentally, it's embedded in our DNA. Because it's not business for business sake. The purpose of running this great business is actually to have that impact in the neighborhood.
We're seeing nonprofits pursue more business-like activities. So we're seeing this huge trend towards social enterprise, which is still a very nascent sector in North America, but it's growing at an astounding rate. So those two things seem to collide with this new look at what 21st century enterprise looks like that seems to connect nonprofit ethos and for-profit profit motives, and landing somewhere in the middle is either the responsible corporation or the social enterprise.
We run a corporate catering business and a small neighborhood cafe, which is the Potluck Cafe, and we make about $1 million a year. Well, we employ people facing barriers in amongst mentors who are industry professionals who've been working in the food business for years and years and years. We prepare and serve anywhere from 15 to 30,000 free meals every year to downtown Eastside residents who are the most nutritionally vulnerable. We started and co-founded a project called the Downtown Eastside Kitchen Tables Project, which is all about reforming the food system down here, doing it in a way that's all about community economic development. A lot of these folks perhaps were not working for a long period of time in the past, but certainly here have really shone and really flourished. It's just very exciting to see that kind of stability come to people who may have had so much instability before. We've got a bit of a different workplace model, which is we provide wraparound life skill support, particularly those facing barriers, but everybody else as well, which means that We ultimately care about somebody's housing situation. Is it stable? You know, we care about people's mental health, whether they live with a mental illness or don't. We care about their relationships, both their family and workplace, because we know that impacts their job. That idea of wraparound life skills support is a huge part of our success. There's a really solid business case to make for taking that approach. If you look beyond just your own bottom line, if you can see the interdependence of your neighborhood and your neighbors and the world, that it's whatever is good for the neighbors, whatever is good for the community will generally be good for you.
And consumers no longer think of businesses in a bubble. They think of businesses as their neighbors and as part of their community. And if you can't treat your customers like you would your neighbors or your community, you're going to get in trouble.
Gone are the days of basically, organizations taking and taking and taking and not giving. It may have worked in the past, but based on my experience, I think we've become a lot more educated. If you don't take care of, people around you and the communities you serve, it's my belief that people don't want to be involved. People, they come to organizations because they want to make an impact. They're not just doing it for a couple of bucks. Nurse Next Door, we're in the business of making lives better, and we're in the business of caring. So people look at Nurse Next Door and they think we're a healthcare company, and sure, we do a lot of healthcare things, but we're really in the business of caring for all of the people that we serve and all of the people that work with us. People, I believe, are inherently good and they want to do the right thing, and when they see organizations that are doing the right thing, they want to be part of it.
There's a huge shift in social conscience and knowing that you want to be part of something or something you can believe in or something you can sink your teeth in.
So we're seeing more and more organizations adopt a responsible ethos because that actually attracts talent. And when we're talking about Gen X and millennials, people who really want to knit together their purpose in life with their work in the world, that talent management approach is really, really important.
Thank you for calling Nurse Next Door. You've reached Sarah. How can I make your life better today?
We don't advertise for new positions, and for every single position that we have in our office, we get over 100 applicants. Our voluntary turnover is under a couple of percent. With our caregivers, it's under 7%, and the industry average is 70%. 4 years into the program, we actually defined what our core values were, and they became the non-negotiable laws of our organization. We will live a financial loss to live them. We will free up anyone's future who doesn't live all 4 of them. Not great at 3 and missing 1, but people have to live all 4. We had this one client who represented a big part of our business. They accounted for about 80% of our revenue. They gave us about $15 million a year top line. Problem was they weren't very nice to our people. They would yell at our people, treat them like garbage. And so we fired the client. We built a company that day.
As someone once said, it's not a principle until it costs you money. But in today's highly competitive marketplace, can businesses really afford to operate in accordance with their values? And is it realistic to expect a company to lose money just to accommodate their ethics?
My first foray into business was to Mountain Equipment Co-op, so a cooperative, but nonetheless a $250 million retailer here in Canada, and that was kind of my first step into the business world. We had built some mountain bike armor in a factory in China. The way that the scheduling worked with the auditing, that we didn't really get the results until the product was made and on the boat. And when we got the results of the factory, as it turned out, the factory didn't meet the standards of Mountain Equipment Co-op, and it had some, kind of red list issues on it regarding worker rights abuses. MEC was going to make a decision to leave. And yet we had, 6 figures worth of product about to land in Vancouver, and the debate was, do we sell it? Everybody had a different opinion. I didn't want to landfill it or incinerate it as the environmental person, and the buyers thought we should be selling it and just be really transparent and donate the proceeds. But at the end of the day, the CEO, I remember it really clearly, Peter Robinson, said, we can't sell this and we can't donate it. Like this product doesn't represent anything that we're about as a company, and he made the decision to destroy the product. And it was a tough decision on so many fronts, environmental and financial, but to me it was probably one of the most significant points of seeing values in action and seeing ethics in action in a business, and it definitely influenced how I've moved forward as an entrepreneur. We disparagingly talk about our industry as trash and trinkets, and I think that was something that was in some way compelling about coming into this industry, is that it is one ripe for revolution. It is really fun to sit across the table from someone and say, do you really need that? Can you do something different? Can you do something better? Or can you do nothing at all? And there's been cases where some of our team members and myself have sat with a client and talked them out of product because it's not values aligned, it's chemically laden, or it just is it has no purpose or utility. It's just a ridiculous knick-knack. We see that as part of our brand promise, is talking people out of stuff that they don't need to be doing. And when they are going to do it right. Our stated corporate mission, which has pretty much been the same from the get-go, is to change the world through the simple act of buying.
I got a call from a woman who said, I'd like to come and see you because I understand you're a local manufacturer and I want to see what it is that you do. She came in and she goes, oh, okay, this is really nice. Do you have anything that's low impact, environmentally friendly? And I said, what do you mean? And she says, well, a lot of this product is, made from petroleum. It's dyed with this black dye, which has a lot of heavy metals. This probably has lots of formaldehyde on it. Do you have anything that is less impactful to the environment? And I just kind of went, I'm not sure, I don't think so. It was kind of like a wake-up call. I didn't really know where she was going, but she was asking questions that nobody had ever asked me before. So I'm, contemplating this, and I said, no, but I would like to learn more, and what should I do? Her response to me is, well, it's not what you should do. It's what do you want to do? This is not something that you just say, okay, I'm going to switch. And I didn't really understand what that meant. I wanted to do it, but I didn't really know how. There was no roadmap. So I had to go and do all my own investigation. And I learned about, organic cotton, recycled polyester, and hemp, and I saw that there was really cool fabrics out there, and maybe they weren't the best fabrics in the world, but they had less of an impact on the environment. So, I went down that path and I changed, kind of the way I did things. And I thought, wow, okay, yeah, I'm eco now. And, went and trademarked eco apparel, and I had all these great things. And a lot of it I didn't understand was marketing. It was, okay, yes, let's project to the public that I'm making stuff that's environmentally friendly, when it wasn't, right? And this was really what I didn't understand. And there was one case where they were this large beverage company, probably like the biggest brand on the planet. They have a social conscience as well, and they thought, hey, let's buy some apparel from somebody who's, doing it right. I'm sitting there in a room, and there's all these suits at this big boardroom table, and I'm doing my little song and dance, and hey, I've got organic cotton, hey, I've got recycled polyester, and oh wow, that's great, Mark, that's awesome, Okay, great, thanks very much, and we'll be calling you. I'm walking out, and I get tapped on the shoulder and come with me. So I go into this guy's office, and he sits me down and says, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean, what am I doing? I think you're claiming a lot of things that you really can't support. I'm going, what do you mean? Do you know where the fabric has been milled? I go, I think so. Well, do you know if they have a wastewater treatment plant? I go, nope. Do you know if there's any sort of harmful chemicals and or dye stuffs in this fabric that if we tested it, it would inform us that it shouldn't be in there? Nope. Well, maybe when you are able to tell us through a third party, once you can have somebody else sign off and let us know that this is clean and we should be putting our logo on it, we really can't purchase anything that you have for us, and we won't put our logo on it. Right, okay, good. This is lesson number one. Now I know what Denise is talking about. And there's all of this supply chain behind me, and I don't know what's going on back there.
I think most companies don't know very much about their suppliers. It's like I'm a mate.
So that was intentional, just so you guys know. We wanted to give you a little taste of the documentary. We saw about halfway through. Our plan is to send that link out to you so you can watch the full documentary. So there's about another half an hour of that left, but we definitely wanted to have some space and time to answer some questions and then also do some connecting, which I'm kind of feeling like some people are wanting to do. So we will go ahead and transition into that. So I'm inviting Adrian Zelski back on the stage, and thank you so much for helping with the chairs. And I also wanted to invite up Michael Welchel, if he's in the building, to provide some of his wisdom. Mike from Bucci Kombucha, are you still here? And Peter from Kroll and Company. Oh, Peter left. Okay, understandable. Peter's here in spirit. Okay. All right, so the way that we're going to do the Q&A, and we're going to ask the guys to kind of center a little bit. We're going to have the mic here on the floor. If you have questions, please definitely come up and ask your question, and one of these lovely folks will answer that. So we'll just have people start to come up. Sorry, one last thing. When you come up with your question, if you say your name first, and if you have any type of affiliation that you want to share, that'd be great, just so we can start to put names with faces. Thank you.
My name is Cassie. I'm not understanding the legal aspect of it. So at first when I was hearing everyone talk, I was starting to think this is like just a certification process, but obviously they were mentioning the legal aspect. So I'm just thinking like in terms of any sort of business who's trying to like assess, oh, should I do S Corp, B Corp, you know, LLC, blah, 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 blah. If you can talk a little bit more about the legal aspect of that and how that works for a business.
Sure. I think there's probably two aspects. If you're here in North Carolina, we don't have for-benefit corporation legislation passed. They kind of referenced it on the video. 30-something states, but not North Carolina. We're trying to, but not yet. So here in North Carolina, the legal aspect is basically, as part of the certification, you have to, in your articles of incorporation, you have to go in and kind of change or add some language that says, not that the kind of purpose of the corporation is not to necessarily maximize shareholder value, but maximize stakeholder value. So it basically takes a wider lens on the constituents. So it's the community, the environment. So that's the legal aspect here in North Carolina. So you can be an LLC, you can be an S Corp, you can be a partnership, whatever. But as part of your organizing documents, you have to kind of state that you're taking in a broader set of stakeholders. But there is a legal aspect that's broader. Yeah, I mean, as far as like if you're protection of liabilities, yeah, that you actually have that incorporated in the kind of DNA, the paperwork of your organization, that if someone wanted to sue you, that you kind of have got that kind of protection.
And that question gets asked a lot by a lot of people because I think if you look at it from a standpoint of like taxation, do I get tax benefits or do I? Yeah, a lot of people want to know those questions. And keep in mind this passed in January of 2012. It's a miracle that it got into the United States Constitution. I still don't understand exactly how that happened to put an ethical DNA inside the United States corporate, documents, and it snuck it in somehow, in one day. But the idea is similar to it's ratified as far as being open to states to vote on it. So, it's similar to, when slavery was being abolished or medical marijuana or similar things where people are making decisions based on their constituency and who gets it in front of their capital. But right now in North Carolina, it hasn't really happened. So really all it is just you declaring that you're going to go for a better business practice. And then over time, the evolution of B Corporation is to be more of a, indoctrinated tax status, corporate, model that, in 20 years, it might be completely evolved into a much more deeper, reality. So I think that's what it kind of looks like. Yeah. Good. Anything else? Or? All right, cool.
Don't be shy. I know there's some questions out there. Sure. We have a few minutes for questions.
Okay, I'm just getting together a business plan right now for a new company that's, I would almost call it a B+ corp because it's going beyond some of the stuff. And I'm not just trying to sound egotistical, but I'm really thoughtful about all that. Is there something equivalent to the Small Business Administration for someone starting a business like that, where it's going above and beyond and not just, looking for profit?
As far as support systems, or
like help.
Yeah, yeah,
Figure
yeah.
it all out.
Well, B Lab is a nonprofit that was started to make sure that B Corps were developed properly. That was Jaco and Gilbert set up the B Labs to be the third-party, nonprofit that's certified with as much support as they can get. They raise money constantly through fundraising, through investors and everything that they can to keep it going. It's expanding consistently. That's what Cortina was trying to talk about, getting something here where we have somebody every day in an office and you're like, hey, I need help with this. And then as far as Big Path Capital is he's a more large stake investor, but there's investment companies, and then Peter Kroll's investment strategy. So, there's developing systems. In California, there's a lot. I mean, in San Francisco, you can basically walk into these meetings and come away with every resource you need, and that's why it's expanding so fast there. But it's a developing thing. It's only 2 years old, really, so.
So it's just about going to those lunches, the meetups and stuff right now?
Yeah, it's an organism. An organism is supposed to spread and grow, so that's what the hope is,
Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Chris Cashwell. I'm a local startup founder. I work a lot in tech, and we do, in tech, as you might have imagined, we do a lot of external fundraising. A lot of our funding comes from outside sources. So, for instance, most major technology companies that actually get out to the market have collected, a pretty substantial, at least six-figure investment from a major investor. I would like to hear a little bit more from the investment side. There's somewhere between the kind of investment bank level of, $5 mil plus type financing and, friends and family, $20,000, $30,000 type raises. I'm wondering if you have any insight into what real world raises are for like tech companies that actually have a real environmental and social focus.
Sure. I think if you're talking about in that 500,000, a couple million type range, that's kind of what we would typify as an angel investor. So it's above the friends and family, but it's below kind of your institutional funds. And so as far as like a social, environmental focus, there is a group called Investor Circle. So if you familiar with that? Okay. So investorcircle.net, but it's a national group of angel investors that are interested in social and environmental return in addition to the financial return. But I think it's really your angel investor that kind of plays in that sector.
I guess I want to refine that question a little bit to be more targeted to, I guess, what level of interest really do you see in actually furthering that form of business?
As far as the technology, I think it's really hard to say because I think it's almost like on a per business kind of what's the value proposition of that business to kind of articulate that. I think in general, if it's technology is usually capital efficient business, so that's nice. Investors like that. So I think it's really about the impact that it's creating would be the key.
I have something to add on, which applies more broadly than just to tech companies, but in the world of how companies are starting to get financed, there is some major development, especially for tech companies, but for other ideas as well. It's this whole crowdsourcing. Websites like Indiegogo and Kickstarter are great, they're leading the way in that. But that is already a great way that startup tech companies are getting funded before they actually produce their product. And then some exciting legislation that's in the works now, and maybe someone here has more current information than I do, but is actually expanding upon that idea of crowdsourcing to allow companies to actually sell off shares of their company through a model like a Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And that's something that we've kind of kicked around at Bucci. We're working on becoming a worker-owned company, and we're around 15% employee-held right now. But I think our ultimate ideal would actually be to open up and become a community-owned company, where the people who are really passionate about us could go on and spend $500 to get a small but symbolic ownership in our company. It would obviously be non-voting. But then you take all of the people, in our case, who are fans of our product and make them owners of the company and real ambassadors. And in the same way that a worker ownership model increases that sense of buy-in, you can imagine how that would do the same thing with the larger community. So that's more general, but totally applies to tech companies as well.
Yeah, and on that note, Kickstarter just became a benefit corporation. They became a B Corp, yeah. So that's a really cool thing. And so there's, inside, I just did a Kickstarter with Rise in Appalachia to raise money to make their new album. And watching that whole thing happen, they became a B Corp while we were doing it. And they were more supportive of us because we were in the B Corp world too. So it becomes, it's an attraction thing. And it's like, so, and also in investments, I think one thing to know, you'd have to have your product, you'd have to be in action. But once you become a benefit corporation or a B Corp, you get put into a thing called a GEARS rating, which is GIIRS. And it basically puts you into a venture capital or social responsible investor circle where people can look at that and be like, I like this idea. And you can say, hey, I'm on the GEARS rating. Here's what I am, and this is what I can accomplish. And you can, so you kind of get put in a circle of people that are looking in this avenue to put money into. But, like he said, it's per business, I think. So it always is, and I think that's the way it should be, so.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. What's the name of your thing?
So as tech founders tend to do, I play the field a little bit. So I've got two kind of major projects going on, one of which is a rental property management platform. It's called Renti. And the other is a soon-to-launch cash payment network, which is called Sonic Payments. You guys will be hearing a lot more about that very soon.
All right, cool. More power to you.
Yeah, so we'll have one more question and then we'll transition.
Hey, I have to stand on my tippy toes. I'm Jen, I go to UNCA. I'm working on divestment, removing our invested money from fossil fuel companies. I just wanted to know if you guys had any advice for how institutions in general, whether it be faith-based or universities, can use our commerce to support and benefit the communities that we seek to serve.
Somebody came up to me in the middle of the movie and said, we need to show this at schools. There's also another film called The Corporation. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It was from the year 2005. It kind of just explains the whole development of the corporate, how it even started and kind of where it diverged. And it goes back to that post-World War II industrial idea. And it also, at the end, is nothing but solutions. The first 90 minutes, you just feel like the whole world's going to crumble. But then the last 30 minutes is like, hey, here's how we can actually change it. And, this is 2005, so it's pre-B Corp. So B Corp, there's all kinds of, there's a serious movement towards realizing that business is the solution. So I think, diverting, fossil fuels from, our power structure, recreating systems where we're not using dams for our power and trying to control, control our resources for the 7 generations ahead again, all those things like that, it's very much happening. So I think you just kind of have to keep talking and keep meeting and, find ways it's up to your generation. The millennial generation is the one, we're trying to repair what happened in the 40s to the 2000s, and now this new millennial generation is the one to say, I knew how to recycle when I was a kid, so, I remember when recycling was a weird thing, so it's very exciting to see you all come to this stage. It's up to you guys, really, for sure.
I just want to add a quick note to that. If you haven't already visited, I would definitely check out the B Corporation website, which I believe is bcorp.net, bcorporation.net, thank you. It has a couple of videos on their website, as well as some of the other programs and platforms that they've created. One of those is a B Fellows program that works specifically in targeted areas. And I think that we would love to see that extend into Asheville and to have a fellow that's working on college campuses or making those connections between education and business. And they also have I think it's called Be an Ambassador program. And so that's specifically for people that are kind of, well-known, very visible, but for example, or musicians like Rising Appalachia being ambassadors for the Be Local or Be Corp movement, and they specifically targeting people that can help be moving billboards for the messaging. And there's a couple other ways that they have on there to get involved, whether it's sending out messages or tweets and posts on Facebook to your local constituents. They have all those things pre-populated on the website, so it's a really great resource. And it also gives you more information about the B Corp process as well. So just wanted to mention that there are a few resources out there on how to keep things moving full circle. Did you guys have anything else to add?
One thing that is very common in social movements, and I was a student of history, so this is a very important part of it, is to continue to keep this in your, on your shoulder, in your thoughts, in your heart. It's not just something to discuss, watch a movie, and think that there's things happening. It's up to you all. It's up to us. It's up to everybody who's involved in understanding how to make change. It's a daunting task, but it's also the task. If we don't do it, we're going to look at this time in history as a very, clouded, another dark ages almost, where we just didn't even pay attention to how much destruction we were creating. Understanding that this is a solution is very real. It walks with me every day, even when I'm making weird decisions on contracts or arguing about money. I'm still sitting there thinking, wait a second, this has to change. This is part of it. So roll with this in a sort of philosophical way. Once again, that's kind of what I think. Like the way that people thought about, I think therefore I am. I think that changed our existentialism. Well, now it's be the change or do good for the world and see things brighter, because if we don't, we're not going to see them. Like it's up to us. So just kind of want to say that. So thank y'all.
Let's be the change. Round of applause to everybody who had a hand in putting this together. Hats off. Round of applause to you guys. Our lovely panelists and experts and words of wisdom, thank you so much. Without further ado, we're going to open it back up to do some of the connecting, and hopefully you'll leave with at least one new connection. That's the challenge. And also keep a lookout for emails from us on what's next and how you can get further involved. Thank you.